You can pay on page pay. We'll pick up at the first paragraph of the page, even though we got a little bit further than that. Actually, second paragraph. It is impossible to run away from the reality of existence. Person has to be able to live with emunah. Person has to believe that there's nothing else other than the Ribono Shel Olam. And the challenges that I have are visited upon me from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember again, when I have problems, it's easy to go ahead and blame them on the individual who potentially caused me those problems. But it's important for me to realize that that individual who causes me the problems is like the makel. He's the staff in the hands of HaKadosh. He's the staff in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So just like, again, a person could, the dog barks at the staff, or a person can recognize that it's not the staff, but it's the person holding the staff. So in life also, a person can get angry at the individual, a person can get angry at the circumstances, but it's important for a person to realize that that which occurs because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. U'ach v'rak b'yadayim shel Hashem yisbarach. V'rak kasher habor yachlit, rach az ya'avru ha'yisrim sheyeshel. And it is only once HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides that the difficulties and the challenges will pass. Adam chayiv lahavin ez zehitiv. Person has to recognize this and understand this well. Yesh lecha b'chira al ha'chayim shelcha v'al ha'gorel shelcha. This is a very profound statement. Person has to understand, I have choice about my life, and I have choice about my gorel. Now, my gorel, I guess we literally translate it as my circumstances. Ha'chayim shelcha, my life, is in my hands, v'lo b'yedei achirim, and not in the hands of others. Ki achayim shel kol echad nirim b'diuk kefi ha'ma'asim shelo, ve'im mitzius ba'olam shabrim sobo kach stam, ve'kasher ya'aseh tshuva, hakol yisapech l'tova, ve'gam asoni hagadol b'yoser shelo ya'apoch li'oyev. So we'll say, so here the Mechaber is teaching us a very fundamental yesod, which is the circumstances of my life are visited upon me by HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the express purpose of teaching me lessons. Therefore, when I understand the lessons, when I learn the lessons, but if I don't learn the lessons, if I just refuse to understand the lesson that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching me, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching me, then the circumstances don't change. It's a very profound yesod, that at the end of the day, the Ribono Shel Olam visits circumstances upon me in order that I learn lessons. And if I don't learn the lessons, sometimes the circumstances do not change. Adam shenin, next paragraph. Biad Adam ala pola. Adam sheninza b'sakana. He gives a very interesting mashal. Person finds themselves in a state of sakana. Let's say in front of me again, there's a great abyss. So let's say a person is faced with the following circumstances. I'm running. In front of me again, there's a great home, there's a great abyss. And behind me, there are people running after me to kill me. Bottom of page pay. So what should I do? Right? Here's the one. So what do you do? Do you go ahead and allow yourself to fall into the great abyss? Or do you allow yourself to fall into the hands of the people who are pursuing you? So the Mechaber posits, Tov Yoser She'ik both L'Tahom. It is better to jump into the abyss, Mishihipol B'nei Adam, rather than to fall into the hands of individuals who are ready to kill me. Bless you. Kimo Sharon David Melech, as David Melech says, Nilpa na biyad Hashem, ki rabim rachamov, uviyad Adam al epola. As David HaMelech writes, it is better to fall into the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for his compassion is great, and let me not fall into the hands of man. So this is very interesting. The Mechaber posits this yesod, that if it's a choice between falling into the great abyss versus falling into the hands of God, hands of man, better to fall into the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, better to fall into the abyss. V'zos me'asiba she'evanu la'el, שכאשר אדם המאמין עומד מול סכנת is הוא נשען אך ורק על השם יתברך V'tzoek elav b'chol kocho. As Hashem Yisbarach mashkiach alav va'oselo nes. You see, when I fall into the abyss, then ultimately, again, I'm recognizing that everything is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything is in the hands of the Ribono Shel Olam. And therefore, again, the moment that I begin to place all of my faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I call out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with all of my koach, and I recognize that He is the one who maintains full hashkacha over my existence, Oselo Nes, the Ribono Shel Olam could do anything and everything. Masha'im King, Kasheru Omeid Mul Adam Achar. But again, when I stand opposite another individual, and ultimately, again, I go ahead and I put my ishtadlus, or I rely on my ishtadlus, klape vis-a-vis the other, and I no longer place my faith solely in the hands of God. As I Hashem Yisparach inu mashkiach alon bashkacha malaya. V'yachol lipo b'dei sonov. In other words, the mechaber saying over here is, if when I fall into that abyss and I recognize that there's no one who could save me but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I place my full faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's when incredible things happen. But Lamaisa, again, when I place my faith partially in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we'll say that was the previous section that we did on Erev Yom about chetzi. I place my faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but when there's the but, then at the end of the day, again, the Ribono Shel Olam is not able to work the full measure of hashkacha. The choshekin im shocheach legamri es metzias Hashem. The roa mulo rak b'nei adam. Furthermore, all the more so, if I forget altogether the metzias of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all I see are other people in front of me, as Hashem Yisparach meisra hashkacha mimenu v'bevadei noflam b'yatzura. So we'll say, the Mechaber posits, and I would have to understand that this is a major level of Emunah, But in this major level of Emunah, a person would literally rather fall into the abyss than to fall. See, I would think that if you were to ask most of us, right, I have a choice between falling into the abyss or falling into the hands of people. I think most of us would assume, what's the better bet? Falling into the hands of people. Assume, because Lamaisa, again, I can negotiate, I can handle, I can discuss, I can talk about this. The abyss is guaranteed death. There's nothing to talk about. But amazing if the Mechaber says, no, the opposite is true. It is better to fall into the abyss. Because in the hands of people, so you know what Rabbi says, in that case, again, I have to place my faith in people. Masha'inkin, in the abyss, I have the ability to fully place my faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when you fully place your faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that gives the Ribono Shel Olam the ability to work his full measure of hashkacha. It's just such a different level of emunah. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes in and is able to work his full measure of hashkacha, all kinds of things, nisim v'niflos, are able to happen. Again, it's a heightened level of emunah that I guess we have to try to work on. So look what he writes. He goes on, page Pei Aleph. Anoshim al nechashim. Kach mazvirim ha-mefarshim es ma'aseh hashlachas Yosef Labar. So the Mefarshim explain that this, in fact, was the episode of Yosef and the pit. As Yosef's son, Yosef's son also. Yosef's brothers hated him. They decided to kill him. So Reuven sees that the brothers, the Achim, are literally ready to kill Yosef. But Reuven decides that he wants to try to the best of his ability to save his brother. So what does he do? So what does Reuven do? Reuven decides to urge the brothers to throw Yosef into the pit. Now Reuven knows full well that the pit is filled with nechashim and akravim. The pit is filled with snakes and scorpions. Umatoil hashmachos Yosef lebar mali b'shatz maras arsim halo bevadai kasher yinchas arosham hem yakishu oso v'yagu v'tov Yosef sheishar Yosef yadachav v'layuchol la'orer eschem lasem v'lo yargu. So Mechaber asks, I don't understand. Reuven, what's your cheshbon? Why are you doing Yosef a favor by throwing him into a pit that is filled with poisonous snakes and scorpions? You're going to throw him into the pit, and what's going to happen? He's going to die. Meaning, would you not have been better off to allow Yosef to kind of roll the dice with his brothers. At least if it falls into the hands of the brothers, it's possible that they'll be merciful when he hears cries. They'll be merciful when he begs for mercy. When he pleads for rachmanis. But yet again, going to throw him into the pit. He's definitely going to die. Hatshuvahi. So what's the answer? Sheruven yada sheyosef atzadik ubal emuna. V'hayu lo barer shetekiv sheyosef yargish b'sakana me'anachashim me'akrabim. Miyad yitzak el Hashem b'chol libo. V'az Hashem yisparach b'vada yatzil oso mehem. Ki kach yisna HaKadosh Baruch Hu im hateva shetekiv she'adam tzoich ilav b'chol libo hateva chayev le'ishtanos. We'll stop over here in the middle of this idea, but to understand the Mechaber says something absolutely amazing. The Mechaber posits that at the end of the day, Reuven understood that if he threw Yosef into the pit, Yosef was a Balamun, and as a Balamun Rabbosa, Yosef understood that the Eibon Shalom could do anything and everything if you put your faith in him. If you put your full level of Emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you stop putting faith so much in man. There's no telling what HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do. The Rebbe Shalom could change the laws of nature. The Rebbe Shalom could change the natural order of the world if we have faith in him that he, in fact, could do so. And therefore, again, as the Mechaber posits, ultimately, Reuven figures Yosef's chances are better in a pit filled with snakes and scorpions, but in a pit filled with snakes and scorpions in which he enters into with Emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the same Rebbe Shalom that injected the venom into the scorpion could also cause the scorpion not to sting. That the same Rebbe Shalom that gave the snake the poisonous bite could also command it not to bite. Yosef stood a better chance of Hatzlach. Yosef stood a better chance of success, of salvation, with the Emunah in the pit than he did putting his faith in people. It was an incredible yisod. That sometimes the reason we don't get the salvations we need in life is because we put our faith in people and not our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if we put our faith in the Ribono Shel Olam, there is no telling how HaKadosh Baruch Hu could shape our circumstances, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu could shape our lives. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up in Meretz Hashem in the middle of Chei Aleph, B'Shah Tova on Monday morning.
Sure.
Thank you, God. All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Kuf Lamed Aleph 131, and we are picking up on 131, Kuf Lamed Aleph, right at the beginning. Just remember again, the Gemara says the following. We're talking about the interesting halacha of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, and we already established yesterday that indeed halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, namely that a father has the ability to shift the portion of inheritance to one of his sons among his sons, or one of his daughters among his daughters. In other words, that if you have Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka holds that you could choose to shift the nachla, you could choose to shift the inheritance to one of the children, as long as that person is in fact a first position inheritor. So for example, again, Yaakov has 3 sons. He could choose to give all of the Yerusha to one of his sons. Again, we already established yesterday, you can't play with the double portion of the Bechar. The Bechar gets his double portion no matter what. But for the other sons and for the other daughters, you can go ahead and shift the Nachala to them. So that's the Yemara based on this. By Rava, Bebari Heich. So Bebari Heich. So Rava asked the father, we'll say the paradigmatic case of Yochanan ben Beroka is we're dealing with a father who's a shriv mira. He's on his deathbed, and he's conveying the property to one of his children amongst his children as his shriv mira. So the shayla is Kikam Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka b'shriv mira bebar orusehu aval bebarilo odilma afilu bebari nami. So we'll say the fundamental shayla that the Gemara asks over here is when Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka conveys to the father this ability to give the nachla, to give the inheritance to one of the children. Ultimately, again, is that only when the father is a shchiv meira, but not when he's healthy, or when he's healthy as well, when he's a bari, does he have the ability to do so as well? Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Ben bari heich, bari shamar ploni, shamari shamar ploni, yirash sadeh plonis. Miyamar Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, dekani kevan deray liyarsho, bar arusi, roi lahorish miyad, shaholech lamos, bikarinan baby yom hanchilas. I'm supposed to remember again. What's the Gemara Shaila? We established yesterday that the Sarah Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka is based on the pasuk of V'haya b'yom hanchilo esbanav. It will be on the day that he bequeaths to his sons. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka darshins, you see from here that a father has the ability to bequeath his estate to any of his sons. Even if he chooses to bequeath it all to one son over the rest of his sons, he has the ability to do so. So we'll say it goes without saying that b'yom hanchilo, the day that he's bequeathing, sounds like a paradigmatic case would be a shchimera. He's on his deathbed and he's bequeathing his estate. So the fact that the father could do this when he's a shchimera, bless you, I understand. But can he do this even when he is healthy? Can he do this even when he is in a state of health or not? So that's the shayla. So the Gemara says, Amarle Rav Meshashi the Rabba. So Meshashi said to Rabba Tashma, let's analyze this. Do Amarlo Rabbi Nasan the Rabbi. So Rabbi Nasan said to Rabbi, Shanisem Mishnaschem Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. You taught your Mishnah like Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. Why? What did Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka say? This nan. Lo kasav la benin dichrin. So what's that? The Gemara here is referencing again the gzeras benin dichrin. So let's say again, a man did not write in the ksuva of his wife the following idea. This was tonight I was offering the ksuva. Benin dichrin, male sons, tiyahavin lech minoi, that you will have from me. Inon yarsun kesef ksuva seich. They will inherit your ksuva. Yoser al chukein de'emachu. Far more and above their portion above their brothers. So we'll say this is what's called ksuvas benin dichrin. Ksuvas benin dichrin also is a special tonight where, let's say again, a man writes to his wife, in the event that you predecease me, I will not inherit your ksuva property. Rather, your male sons, meaning our male sons, right, that we have, will your ksuva. I will say we'll discuss exactly why a man would write this tonight. On a basic level, we'll say the point of this tonight was the following: that if a man has a daughter who is an only child, he would be very reticent to write to go ahead and give her a large dowry. Why? Because we'll say if she dies, then ultimately again, who's going to inherit her? Her husband, which means that the father's property ultimately shifts to the husband. Masha'in came, if the husband guarantees that the wife's property is going to go to her male children, the wife's father would be a little bit more willing to go ahead and give her a larger dowry. Why? Because he knows that the property is not going to go to his son-in-law. Not that he doesn't like his son-in-law, but he'd like to know that it's going to continue along his family line as well, but that it'll go to his grandchildren. That's called ksuvas benin and dichrin. So again, we'll see it in the Rasham in just a moment. So the Mishnah says the following: let's say a man did not write this tonight inside the ksuva. What's the halacha? Chayiv. We'll say, nevertheless, again, he is still obligated, assuming that in the particular locale in which they live, this was considered to be a normative practice. He is bound by this tonight, even if he didn't write in the ksuva. Why? Shetanai Bezdin. Because ultimately, again, this is considered to be a Tanai Bezdin. Now, we'll say, now, what's the ramification of this in our sukkah? Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Shetanai Bezdin. Shebezdin tiknu ksuvas benin dichrin. Kidamina b'ksuvas. Kadesh yikpots adaviti lebito kibno. Dinosi lebito ene yotzi mizaro. Yembito meso kodem baila. Sheyar shubana ksuvasa achar mosaviem. V'hu sheyehei shem sham mosra dinar. Shote akar nachal adorai. So we'll say it's based on what we just said before. That Lamais, again, this is in order to ensure that the father of the woman would be more willing to get a larger dowry if he knows at the end of the day that what? That his property will remain again with his offspring being his grandchildren, and will not be transferred ultimately to his son-in-law. They both say, now what's the chap of this for us? Alma, Morish ha'av lebein ben habonim, Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. what does this show us? This is a case of where a father is conveying inheritance to some of his sons over other children. Meaning it's probably possible in a case like this, a father has multiple sons, and not all of his sons are from this particular woman. Yet, what is he doing? He's conveying some of his estate ultimately again to some of his sons over others. So I will say, so here, the way the conversation is happening is Rabbi Nosson is saying to Rabbi, you've established this mission like Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, and by the way, in parentheses, it appears that he's able to do this even not as a deathbed gift, but even again as a bari. So we'll say, so Rabbi says, no. The Mishnah reflects the view of everyone. How do you have to read it? None. Don't read it as a Yerusha case, but rather read it as a gift case. This is a case of where the father is gifting this to his sons from this particular. Now, we'll say everybody agrees that what? As a gift, you want, whenever you want, however you want. Rabbi says, Rabbi said, Yaldus Haisavim. Rabbi said the truth is, well, it's very profound. Rabbi says, I was very immature when I gave that answer. I was very immature. That was a Maisi Yaldus. That was an immature act to give that answer. And there was a little bit of an Azaz Panim. It was a little bit disrespectful to Nasan HaBavli. In other words, I was too quick to give the answer in order to go ahead and answer up. It's very profound. Rabbi says, sometimes the greatest display of immaturity is the need to give a quick, reflexive answer. Sometimes, again, maturity means that you take the time to process the question, think about the answer, and even if you can't give it immediately, you give something intelligent instead of just giving something off the cuff. Very profound yisod. Ella dekaimalon benin dichrin lo tarfa mishibadi. So rather, again, Rabbi said benin dichrin is different. Why? Because benin dichrin doesn't have the ability to collect from tarmim mishabadi. In other words, we'll say that if it turns out property was sold off, the male children who inherit the ksuva of their mother do not have the ability to seize this property from sold property. But and Rabbi says, if it's really true that this ultimately was a gift that I'm Milo tar from Mishabadi, then the children should have the ability to seize it even from sold property. Rather, what do you see from here? You see from Rabbi said that indeed this is a case of Yerusha. And Rabbi say, what's the point over here that you're seeing? You see over here that a father has the ability to convey Yerusha to some of his sons beyond that which the other sons will inherit, even if it's what? Even if it's not a deathbed gift, even if the father is absolutely healthy. So the Gemara says, Man shamas le'isle haisvara. So we'll say, whose opinion does this reflect? This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, ushmamina afilu bebari. And I will say, what do you see from here? That Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka holds. This is very important to so. Remember, what we've established so far is that Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka says that what? That I, as a father, have the right to give Yerusha to any of my sons. Even if what? I end up depriving other sons as a result. So I have 4 sons. If I choose to give the Yerusha to one of my sons, even though I'm depriving the other 3, I have the right to do that. Again, I will say I can't deprive the Bechor of his Pishnayim, so leaving that aside, but everyone else I can transfer. The question we're trying to figure out over here is what? Does Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka only give a father that right when he's a shchid, when he's on his deathbed, or could he even go ahead and make that declaration when he's healthy? It would appear, based on this case of ksuvas benin dichrin, of the ksuva going to the male children of the wife, that he has the ability to do this even when he's completely healthy. Amar le Rabbi Papa Rabbaye, Beilam Andamar Yisplum, Beilam Andamar Yarsun. So says the Gemara, says a side question. Baba says Tabaye, whether the girsa you want to use by the case of ksuvas benin dichrin is yispun, that it's a gift, or yarsun, that it's Yerusha, ha ein adam makne davar shelo bali olam. Both say, how does this whole thing work to begin with? You can't be makne davar shelo bali olam. In other words, you can't go ahead and they say it doesn't yet exist. They both say, now what does this mean in this case? In this case, the property does exist. What potentially doesn't exist? They both say, the recipient, the sons, right? The sons don't yet exist. So how can you be makne something to the sons when the sons don't yet exist? Now, people be married, Mary says you can be makne something that doesn't yet exist. Hani mili L'davar sheyeshno ba'olam. I will say that applies if the intended recipient. Aval l'davar sheyeshno ba'olam lo. I will say the contrary. Meru says that you could be maknes something that does not yet exist. That's only if the intended recipient exists. But l'maisikin, if the intended recipient does not exist, you can't be makne. Ella tonight based in shiny. So the Gemara says rather again. You have to say that anything that's a Tanai Beis Sibos, like Ksubas ben Dichrin, Tanai Beis Sibos means it's something that ultimately Beis Din legislates. Anything that is legislated, by definition, is often not bound by the same legal criteria as conditions that I make myself. So I will say, so in locales where they observed this Ksubas ben Dichrin, it was a piece of rabbinic legislation. As such, again, even on a technical level, it was a davar shelo bali olam. Ultimately, again, it was still binding. Hachanami tinai beis din shayni. Amarlei mishum dekama fiklei bilashon yarsun. So the Gemara says. So remember, again, all of this came about because lemaisa, the way the Bnei Dichrin tonight was phrased, it was phrased ultimately as Yerusha. Hada amra Abaye lav milsihi. Abai said afterwards, the truth is what I said before was not correct. So the Gemara says, Disnan, lo kasavla binan nukvin, di yahavin lechiminai, yahavin yasvin bevesi, viyasin minachasi, ad titilak kol mekufrin. So let's listen to this. Let's say, this is all talking about, we have this all in Maseches Ksubas. We'll say, these are all different Tanoi Ksuba. These are all different conditions written in the Ksuba. Ultimately, again, that even if you don't write them, they become binding. I'll just point this out to you. It's the same way, just to illustrate this. What happens if a man doesn't write a ksuba for his wife? Man gets married, Mazel Tov, the shmark was so good that they just forgot to write the ksuba. So what happens in a case like that? Is the husband bound by the ksuba? And the answer, of course, is yes. Yes, because we'll say it's called the Tanai Beis Din. If you think that's the Tanai Beis Din, it's binding upon you, even if you don't execute the actual document. So these are other examples of that. So let's say in this case, under normal circumstances, in a ksuva, what they used to write is that any female daughters, benan nukvin, any daughters, the ahavin lechiminoi, that I have from you, this is the husband speaking to his wife, any daughters we have together, yosvan bebeisi, will be permitted to live in my home, and will be supported by my estate, aditilakchon leguvrin, until they get married. So most say this is a condition where a man writes in a ksuba that he agrees to support his daughters until they get married. You understand, of course, that midaraisa, so a father is not obligated to support his children after a certain age, right? We saw this again in Ksubis. It's usually at the age of 6, 7, 8. There's no obligation. Again, Beis Din now contemporarily imposes an obligation. But Lamaisa, this was a special Tanai that was written in Ksuba to safeguard daughters. That Lamaisa, again, a man agrees, I'm going to support my daughters until they get married. So the Gemara says, and what happens? Even if you didn't write this is still binding upon the individual. Why? Because it's a Tanai Beis Din. So the Gemara says, isn't this a case? So this would be a case where the father is granting a matana to the daughters, he's gifting support to the daughters, and ultimately, again, what he's saying is when I die, so I'm gifting the use of my estate and the support of my estate to my daughters, but the rest of my estate is going to be inherited by my sons. V'chol lezeh beirusha afilu rabbanon modu. And Avosa, in a case where a man dies and he says, some of my offspring will get a matana, some of my offspring will get a Yerusha, even the Rabbanan will agree that ultimately this works. Amra li Rav Nechumi ve'ista Amra Vichanina bar Minumi la Abaye. So we'll say, so Rav Nechumi, others says Rav Chananya said to Abaye, Amud Beis, Mimai tevachad beidina iskin. How do you know over here that we're talking about one Beis Din that instituted both of these things? Take a look at the Rashbam. Mimai tevachad beidina iskin. Telehave v'soch kedei di bortil b'trei beidina iskin. V'lo koi hai ahai klal. V'lo mahani loshk matana dezeh azeh. So I'll say, how do you know that this was instituted by one Beis Din? Maybe again, maybe this was instituted in two different Batei Din. To which the Gemara says, "Lo, sagadaitcha diktani reisha Zet Medrash Darash Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Lefnei Chachamim B'Kerem B'Yavna. So we'll say no, because remember, what did we learn? We learned the following. This Medrash, when we Medrash means this drasha, this teaching was taught by Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, by the Chachamim, or the Chachamim B'Kerem B'Yavna. That's what? Habonim Yershu V'Habonos Yazonu. And Rabbi say in this case, where the father makes the condition that his daughters will be supported by his estate. So Rabbi says the way we paskin is that the sons inherit, the daughters are supported, and we say Mahabonim Inan Yarshin Ela La'achar Misas Avihen, just like the sons only inherit after the death of their father. Afbanos Lo Yazonu Ela La'achar Misas Avihen. We'll say first wide line, Kof Lamed Aleph Owen Beis. So to the daughters only get their support after the death of their father. So watch this. See if you say that this was all instituted by one Beis Din, right? Therefore, ultimately, again, that's how we can learn out one takana from the other. But if you say that this was instituted in two different Batei Din, how could we learn out one takana from the other takana? To which the Gemara says, well, maybe not. Maybe it was instituted in two different Batei Din. Ubeidina Basra takun kebeidina kama. And the second Beis simply legislated the law or modeled the law after the previous Beis psak halacha. In order not to go ahead and what? In order not to go ahead and have a contradiction between one takana and the next. So the Gemara gets off on a significant tangent in terms of understanding the nature of the two takanas. But remember again, let's go back for a moment to the question we started with. What's the question we started with, Rabosai? So remember again, what we established in yesterday's daf is that the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. That's what we started with. Namely, that what? That a father has the ability to assign inheritance to one of his other children. So, just for illustration purposes, Yaakov has 4 sons. Assuming there's no halachic bechor, he has the ability and the right to assign the Yerusha to one of the sons above all of the other sons, even though he thereby deprives the other sons of their intended Yerusha. The shaila now that we were dealing with, Rabosai, was what? The shaila we were dealing with was, we'll say whatever it is, don't worry about it. Right? So as I said, at the end of the day, the shaila that we're trying to deal with over here is does the father only have that right on a deathbed as a matna shchiv mera, or does the father have the ability to do that even as a bari, even as in other words, we'll say, what we're asking here is Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka's license for a father to convey and to shift inheritance to one son over other sons, is that a function of a deathbed gift, or is that a function ultimately again of a father's general right even when he's healthy? I will say, bottom line, what comes out from this sugya, and this indeed is the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins, and again, yesterday we quoted Reish Pei Aleph, Sif Aleph, this is in Reish Pei Aleph, Sif Hey, Shulchan Aruch paskins, that Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka's halacha, which we accept halacha l'maisa, only applies as a matnas shchiv mera, only applies ultimately again as a deathbed gift. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka's halacha is on the books, but a father only has the ability to do it on his deathbed, does not have the ability to do it as a bari. And from now that being said, what can the father do as a bari? What can the father do? A regular matana. So also remember again, as a regular, here's the difference. We'll say, as a shchiv mera, he has the ability to convey as Yerusha the property to one son over his other sons. As a bari, he doesn't have the ability to convey the estate b'toras Yerusha, but he does have the ability to convey his estate how he wants and to whom he wants b'toras matana. And I will say that everyone agrees with. That again, you could always gift your estate to whoever you want, however you want, at any point in time. And that matana, even if again, I will say, it turns out that by the time a person dies, there's not going to be anything left for all of his children to inherit. That's the individual's prerogative. But to utilize Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka as a mechanism of Yerusha, one could only do that ultimately again as a Shchiv Mira, but one cannot do it as a Bari. As a Bari, one has the ability to gift your property to whoever you want, but as Yerusha, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, only as a Shchiv Mira. Good. Says the Gemara, Bosei Sal begin new sugya. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Very interesting case. Hakosi kol nechasav leishto. Let's say a man writes all of his property to his wife. Now, what's the case over here? Look at the Rashbam. Hakosev kol nechasav leishto b'lashon matana. So, in a case like this, a man writes a document conveying all of his property to his wife as a gift. As a gift. So, he gives his entire estate to his wife. So, how do we understand that? So, we'll say, here's the problem. The problem is this is assuming that there's a case of where there are children. So how do we understand a case of where a man writes all of his property to his wife, they're seemingly depriving his children of Yerusha? To which the Gemara says, we understand that what is he doing? Lo asa ela apetropa. What he's really doing, Rabbi is what? He's making her an apotropis. He's actually making her the executor over the estate. In other words, when he says, I'm giving you the entire estate, we assume that a man is not going to want to deprive his children of their inheritance. So by conveying to her the estate, he's making her the executor over the estate. Now, I will say, now why would he make his wife the executor over the estate? Look at the Rashbam. Lo asa ela apetropa do omet hadasu de'in adam maniach hezbana v'nosin es hakol ishta. Because I will say this is based on an assumption that a man is not going to deprive his children of their Yerusha and give everything to his wife. This is an assumption that Chazal made. But he did gift it, but he gifted the property to his wife. So how do we understand that? He gifted the property to his wife in order that she should become the apotropis. She should become the executor. Why? We'll say, what was the man doing when he assigned the property to his wife? He was ensuring that the children will respect her. The children will respect her. Rabbi will say, if she's in charge of the money, it's amazing how people respect the individual in charge of the money. So if she's in charge of the money, ultimately, again, that ensures that the children will respect her. Will come on money law. So we'll say, so this is incredible. So the Gemara is saying over here is, even though the lashon of the matana is such that he is conveying to her the full estate, we understand that in fact he's not conveying to her the estate, rather he's conveying to her the position of the executor of the estate. Now I have to understand something. The Gemara is understanding over here that the notion of making someone the executor over the estate is an incredibly chashiv thing. That's a big covet to give someone. So the Gemara is understanding over here that the husband is giving this covet to his wife in order that she be respected and held in high esteem by the children. So back to the Gemara. So of course, Pshita, so we'll say now the Gemara is going to try to look at this in a number of different cases. Pshita, benoha gadol. So we'll say similarly, what happens if a man went ahead and wrote his entire estate to his oldest son? Let's say he gave everything to his oldest son. So the Gemara says, lo asa ela apotropis. It's clear on both sides that if a man, quote unquote, left his entire estate to his oldest son, his intention was not to literally give the entire estate to the oldest son. Rather, what was it to do? To make his oldest son the executor of the estate. Look at the Rashbam. Pshita b'no agadol shekasav kol nechasav. It's about 5 lines. Lo asala apotropis. Tirotzuhu sheichal kolo echav kavod sheichayban bichvodo kidarmiran ve'es l'rabos achicha hagadol ve'omed hadas u'shlechad nunaskavi. So it's just an interesting aside. Now, the halacha is that you are obligated to go ahead and respect your older brother. Where do we learn this from? Because the Torah says, Kavit es avicha ve'es imecha. Because it just said, Kavit avicha ve'imecha. What's the extra S, ve'es? So the Gemara says, ve'es is the rabos achicha hagadol. The ve'es comes to include your older brother. Person is obligated to respect his older brother. So therefore, the Gemara says the following. If a father goes there and gives his entire estate to the oldest son, the way we understand that is the following. So we'll say, this is very interesting. Even though we just said before, like we passed like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, that a father can't give his entire estate to one child, we don't normally understand that to be the normal course of events. Therefore, if the father goes ahead and gives the entire estate to the Bechor, the way we understand it is the father is making the Bechor the executor of the estate. Why does the father want to make the Bechor the executor of the estate? In order that the other brothers will respect him appropriately. What about Bino Akatan Mai? What happens if the father gave the entire estate to the youngest son? What is the status of that gift? Itma Rav Chaniloi Bar Idi Amar Shmuel Afilu B'na Katan Amutal Ba'arisa. Even if the child is so young, that he's in the cradle. Nevertheless, we understand that the father has effectively made that child the executor. As we'll say, even if the father left the entire estate to the youngest son, we don't view that gift, or we don't view that Yerusha as the father giving the entire estate to the youngest son. Rather, what the father is saying is he's making the youngest son the executor of the estate. Look at the Rashbam. Afilu katan amutal ba'arisa rotzu bichvodo v'lo asal b'troba. So we'll say, what the Gemara is saying over here is, whenever the father leaves the estate to one of his sons, we view that gift as the father making that son the executor of the estate, and not the father literally transferring all of the property to that child. So the Gemara gives another couple of other cases. Pshita, bino ve'acher. We'll say, let's say again, the father leaves the estate to, let's say again, his son, or for that matter, to someone else. So we'll say, so how do we view those gifts? So acher b'matana. So we'll say, if a man literally goes ahead and gives his entire estate to someone, he gifts it. So we'll say, so there are two different, now based on what we're saying is the following. When a man gives his property, his entire estate to someone, so what we've said until now is supposed to say, how could one view that gift? How can one view that gift? That I'm giving that individual the power to be the executor over my estate. That's what I'm viewing that gift. The Gemara says, but if a man gifts his estate to someone who is totally unrelated to him, we're calling that person an acher, it doesn't make sense that the individual is making that person the executor over his estate. Why? Because we assume that a person makes someone the executor over his estate when he wants the other inheritors to respect that individual. So I could gift my estate to my wife, and we view that as I'm making her the executor of my estate because I want my children to respect my wife. I could be giving over all of my property to my Bechor because I want him again to be the executor of my estate. Why? Because I want my other sons to respect him. Even if I'm giving it to my youngest son, I might want my other sons to respect him. But if a man goes ahead and gifts his property to someone who is totally unrelated to him, then Abba said the way we view that is, I'm not making that person my executor. Rather, what am I doing? I'm giving it to them as a gift. That's acher b'matana ubino apetropis. So Abba say it's only when I give the property to my son that I view that I'm making my son the apetropis. But if I'm just gifting that property to another, I'm not making. Why would I be making that person an apetropis? Instead, what I'm doing is I'm literally giving that gift. So we'll say, this is really amazing. What's happening over here, what Chazal essentially are saying is, when you gift someone your estate, the nature of that gift is very much dependent on who the recipient is. If we understand the recipient is someone who I would want to be an apotropos, an executor, then we view that gift as vesting that person with executor rights. On the other hand, if that person has nothing really to do with me, and Lamai said there's no good reason why I would want that person to be the apotropos, then Lamai said we don't view it as a conveying of executorship rights, rather we view it simply as a matana. So the Gemara gives another couple of cases. Ishto arusa v'ishto grusha. Let's say a man goes ahead and conveys his estate to his wife who is his arusa. So remember again, that's life only after Erisin. Erisin is affected by a man giving a woman an item of value. So they're married, but they can't yet live together. Or for that matter, again, a man divorced his wife and now makes to her a gift of his estate. All right, that was it. Gifts her the estate. So how do we view that gift? The matana. So what matana? So I'll say we view that as a gift, meaning, what does that mean? We don't view that a man is making his arusa, nor do we view that a man is making his grusha the executor. Rather, again, in those cases, for whatever the reason, what is he doing? When he gives her the estate, he's literally giving her a gift. Literally giving her a gift. Ibailo. So the Gemara asks the following kasha. We'll say, now this is a number of cases kind of strung together. So Ibailo, bas itzel banim. Now, what about in the following case? What happens? What happens if a man leaves behind a daughter and sons? A daughter and sons. And what happens? He gifts the property to the daughter and not to the sons. Look at the Rashbam for just a moment. The Rashbam says it's towards the bottom, about 8 lines up from the bottom. Bas eitzel banim, keivan danu roim, dechosh shim le'inyan nechasim muatin. Tamir abanos yizol v'abanos yachshu al psachim, alma techashina le'yikra debanos, miyikra debanim. V'yikra le'memar da'asa petropa, oldul ma'ani v'li le'inyan chazar. So let's listen to this. The Gemara just says the following. We know and dies, and there is limited assets in the estates. Remember, what we've established is in general, when a man dies and leaves behind sons, so sons inherit the estate, but daughters are entitled to support from the estate. So what happens in a situation where a man dies and there's very limited assets? So in general, what the halacha is the following, that we tell the son, we let the daughters be supported by the estate. The sons have title to the estate, but we let the daughters receive support from the estate, and we let the sons go collecting door to door. In other words, sons, you go figure it out. So Gemara says the following case. What happens if a man goes ahead and leaves his estate to his daughters, or he gifts it to the daughters amongst the sons? How do we view that? Is that a gift, or is the man making the daughter the apotropis? Similarly, the isha eitzel ha'achim. Let's say a man goes ahead and gifts his estate to his wife. Again, he doesn't have brothers, but he doesn't have sons, but he has brothers. So do we view that the man is gifting the estate to his wife, or is he making her the executor over the estate? Or the isha eitzel b'nei habal. Or I will say, for that matter, the husband has sons, again, not from this woman, not from his wife, and he gifts her the property instead of his sons. Do we view that again? In all the cases, also the shayla we're asking is, do we view the gift, the matana, as a real gift? Or do we view the matana ultimately again as the man making these people, these individuals, the executor over the estate? Ravina mishmei de Rava. So Ravina said in the name of Rava, Bekulu lo kana lebar meishto arusa veishto grusha. In all of these cases, we view that the man is making these individuals the executor of the estate, with the exception of 2 cases, of where he gifts the property to his wife who's an arusa or to his wife who's a grusha. In those cases, we don't view it as if the man is making this woman the executor. Rather, what is he doing? He's gifting it to her. What's the logic over here? Because in these cases, it doesn't make sense that a man is going to make his arusa wife the executor over the estate. Why? Because since they're not living together, since they're not a bond of intimacy that has been formed between them, it doesn't make sense that he's giving her this amount of power over his estate. Similarly, again, if Lamaisa they're divorced, it doesn't make sense that he's giving her the executorship over the estate. So in those 2 cases, in all the other cases, we view the gift as a conveyance of executorship over the estate. But in the case of Ishto Grusha and Ishto Arusa, we view it as if he's giving her a matana, not making her the executor. Rav Avira Mishmei de Rava Amar, Rav Avira in the name of Rava said Ravosai, Bekulu Kani. No, in fact, in all of these cases, ultimately again, the individual in question will be kona, the individual in question will acquire it as a gift. Levar me'isha itzel ha'achin, the So while saying all of these other cases, we assume that in fact the man was giving the intended individual a gift, with the exception of what? With the exception also of the case of where a man goes ahead and doesn't have sons, but rather he gifts the estate to his wife. In that case, we understand that he's making her the executor of the estate, the isha itzel habanim, and ultimately itzel b'nei habal. And we'll say similarly in the case where he has sons, but the sons are not from this particular woman, and he gifts the property to her, we assume that ultimately, again, he is in fact making her the executor of the estate. So we'll say, so bottom line, what the Gemara is coming to teach us over here, and this is actually quite amazing, is that you could have a case where a man is gifting property to someone, but the way we interpret the nature of that gift is that he's not really conveying a gift. Rather, he's conveying to that individual the executorship rights of the estate. Now, how do we know when something is conveyed as a gift and conveyed as an executorship, so we'll say it appears the following criteria. These following criteria. When we see that the husband would have a vested interest in the other inheriting parties, I should say differently. When we see that the husband would want to ensure that the sons who would inherit would respect a particular individual, he would vest that individual with the executorship over the estate. It seems to me when the person is the apotropis, by definition, the rest of the mishpacha is obligated to respect that individual for a very simple level. Not because they hold the person in such high esteem, but it's because that person controls the checkbook of the estate. So therefore, whenever we would see that the father would want this particular individual in question to be respected by the sons who would inherit, that's when we view the gift not as a gift, but rather as a conveyance of the executorship. But when we see that the father wouldn't really care whether or not the particular individual named in the gift is respected or not, then we don't view it as an executorship. Rather, we view it ultimately again as a gift. So we'll stop over here for today. We're going to pick up again with this sugya tomorrow. Let me just share with you a short idea of an arsha. So we'll say that the great sukkos this week to read Parshas Naso. So remember again, interestingly enough, in Parshas Naso, the Torah records the process of sota. So without getting into all of the details here, so suffice it to say that the process of sota, a man goes ahead and suspects his wife of committing adultery. So the Torah details an entire process in which, again, a wife's fidelity is checked. And again, specifically, we know the entire process. The Torah writes a piece of parchment. It's erased in a vial of water, in an earthenware vial of water. Woman drinks the potion, and again, it checks her fidelity to her husband. So I want to share with you a beautiful insight. So the pasuk says over here, this is in Perek Hey, pasuk Yud Zayin. Chapter 5, verse 17, the pasuk says, "V'lakach hakohen mayim kidoshim b'kli cheres." A kohen will go ahead and take sanctified water in an earthenware vessel, u'min ha'afar asher yihiyeh b'karka hamishkan, and he will take from the dirt that is on the earth of the mishkan, yikach hakohen v'nasan el hamayim. So again, assuming the straightforward pasuk, kohen takes water, sanctified water in an earthenware vessel, and from the dirt that is on the floor of the Mishkan, the Kohen will take, and Nasan El HaMayim, he'll place it in the water. So the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says something absolutely amazing. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh looks at the phrase, Umin ha'afar asher yihiyeh b'karka ha'mishkan yikach ha'kohen. Literally from the dirt that will be on the floor of the Mishkan, the Kohen will take. So listen to these beautiful words of the Baal Shem Tov. Min ha'afar, what does it mean from the dirt? Mimi she'ein lo erech chashuv. I will say the afar refers to someone who is humble. Yikach, yilmo, the person should learn. What does this mean? Ve'in lekicha el Torah. The notion of lekicha taking refers to Torah. Shene emar ki lekach tov nasati lachem bechir ha'am. The Kohen refers ultimately again to someone of exalted status. Remez sha'afilu hagadol shebigdolim. So Baal Shem Tov learned something absolutely amazing. He says, "Umin ha'afar asher yihiyeh b'karka ha'mishkan." I will say the afar refers to the lowliest of the low. The afar refers again to even the lowliest of individuals. Even that individual, even from that individual, yikach ha'kohen. Even someone who's the Kohen, even someone who's exalted, even someone who's great. There is something ultimately, again, to be learned from the afar asher yihiyeh b'karka mishkan. I was also saying, a great person realizes that there's something to be learned from every single individual. A great person realizes, as the Mishnah says, Ezu chacham halomi mikol adam. The great person knows that even if he's a Kohen, even if he's someone of incredible accomplishment, someone of incredible standing, there's something to be learned even from the individual who is the afar asher yihiyeh b'karka mishkan yikach. You could take something, you could learn something even from the lowliest of individuals. That, says the Baal Shem Tov, is the message that the Pasuk is coming to teach us. But the truth is, we could take the Baal Shem Tov even just a little bit further. Perhaps the Torah is telling us is the following: not just to learn from another individual. The Torah is teaching me something else. That even if a person is a Kohen, even if a person is accomplished, even if a person knows a lot, we'll say a person has to live life with the midah of humility. Umin ha'afar asher yiyeh bekarka hamishkan yikach. The afar, Rabbi say, refers to the midah of anava, to the midah of humility. See, Rabbi say, a person has, what does it mean to be humble? What it means to be humble at the end of the day means the following. See, Rabbi say, people think that humility means thinking that you're a nothing. That's why most of us don't really like humility, because we don't like to think of ourselves as nothing. That's not what humility means. Humility means at the end of the day that I realize that although I know a lot, and although I may be accomplished, I'm open to learning and I'm open to growth. And I recognize that I don't know everything. And I recognize that some of the things that I think I do know, I may actually be wrong, and I stand ready to relearn them. So the greatest humility in life is when you say to yourself, even though I've been living a certain way for such a long time, and even though, again, I thought that I had my shittas and my ashkafas and my mahalach in life, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have to be open to doing things a little bit differently. To never chas v'shalom get set in one's ways. Rabosai, that's called the midah of afar. The midah of afar. You know the incredible part about afar, the incredible part about dirt is that what? It's not fixed in place. You can scoop up a handful of dirt and you can move it from here to here. That's what it means to be like afar. That's what it means to be like dirt. That's what it means to be humble. To be humble means I don't know everything. And I don't have all of the answers. And just because I've been doing certain things in a certain way for a certain number of years does not automatically mean that that's the way I should keep doing it. Li'olam vayed. I'm open to change. I'm open to evolving. I'm open to growth. I'm open to understanding that I may have to conduct myself in a different way. Yes, I'm a Kohen. Yes, I'm accomplished. Yes, I know a lot. Yes, I've done many wonderful things. But the Torah is telling us that even if you're a Kohen, you have to learn umina afar asher yiyeh bekarka mishkan. Both say, what type of offer do you have to be? You have to be the type of offer that's bekarka mishkan. Karka mishkan, the mishkan was the place of growth. The Mishkan was the place of avodas Hashem. So humility of thinking like yourself of nothing doesn't mean anything. If a person says, I am like the afar from the karka of the Mishkan, my goal in life, I have one singular goal. What's your singular goal in life? What's your singular goal in life? There is only one singular goal in life, and that is growth. Growth. That is the singular goal in life. If a person, excuse me for saying this, if a person says, I have no interest in growth, I'm good where I am, you might as well be dead. What good is life if there's no growth? Because that's death. Death, Rabosai, is the level of existence where there's no more growth. So if a person says, I'm good where I am, that person is as good as dead. That's death. Therefore, what the Pasuk's telling us, Rabosai, is that a person has to grow like the Mishkan. Umina afar asher yiyeh bekarka hamishkan. I have to be like the dirt to the Mishkan. What happens in the dirt to the Mishkan? The coin picks it up and it moves, it grows. A person has to be open to the fact I have to humble myself. Humility doesn't mean I'm a nothing. Humility means I'm a something, but I could be even better. I could be even greater, says the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. Even the greatest Kohen, ultimately who is beautifully accomplished in life, has to learn to take Mina Afar Asher Yihya Bekarka Hamishkan Yikach. Be humble enough to be open to growth. Be like the offer, not that you're low, chas v'shalom, but be like the offer that can be taken and moved. Be like the offer that can be used and manipulated to build. Be like the offer that could be transformed into something else. No matter how accomplished we may be in life, we must always be open and recognizing of the fact that we could always be more, we could always live more, we could always accomplish more.